Hello everyone, this is another edition of the Gospel of Mango, and I'm here with proof that if there's a divine creating force in the universe, it at least has a sense of humor. Mr. Hooch Face, right here. If you can't believe that there's a creative force and it's got a sense of humor, just stare into that face. Just for a moment, alright? That's Hooch. That's why he's of value to us. He reminds us how ridiculous the universe is and how it just keeps on going no matter how ridiculous it gets. And that brings me to my other topic for today, which is science. Oh, science! I believe in science, because science gives us technology, and technology lets us not do any work and never have to actually labor to support ourselves, and we can just play video games all day long because of science. Hooray! Yes, science is a wonderful thing. It has allowed us to progress to the point we're at in civilization, and I consider that to be a good thing. Not everyone necessarily does, but I generally like technology, and though I make fun of video games, it's only because I used to play them all day, every day, and now I realize that life is the ultimate video game, and it's got the best graphics of any of them, very high detail and precision. The personalities that you encounter are infinitely varied and wonderful and fun to interact with. The gold that you earn actually counts for something. So life is really, it's a game, and ultimately it improves the more that we know about our environment and the more that we can manipulate it. And in that sense, science is, pretty much the only way we get to that point. From the Greek essentia, which is basically a branch of philosophy. It's using knowledge and skill in selecting which information that we acquire is actually trustworthy and believable. It's a process. It is a method of acquiring knowledge and verifying that it actually has meaning and truth and pertains to reality. And in that sense, which is the definition of science, that's what science is. Science is awesome, it's unequivocally good, everyone should know more about it, they should use it more in their thinking processes and how they come to conclusions. However, those who seem to just be the real, I call them the cheerleaders of science, right? And they're not actually scientists. Like, they might have had some work in a lab, like, they they went to school, public school, or, and basically they just have this reverence for science and, basically using it as a buffer tool against what they perceive to be religion, which they also see as, anti-rational, not just irrational, but anti-rational, actually stunting the brain and the development of critical thinking skills, which is a fair appraisal. And I'm speaking of other people's thoughts and way of coming to conclusions because I myself shared them, and I used to be an atheistic communist, right? Like, basically believing that biological pleasure was the sole purpose and meaning for life. That's where I'm coming from, was that point of absolute skepticism and doubt, where only the materially provable can possibly be shown or said to exist. And here I am now, basically performing magic in various different ways. But it's just funny because we all intuitively know that there's something more going on in the universe, and it just gets hijacked by this belief in science. But that doesn't really make sense, because here's the thing. Science is based on observation and evidence and actually experimenting in the real world, right? We know that information is true because we can falsify it, we can retest it in a lab or in other, controlled environment or whatever, environment it applies to. And we have ways of determining if this is true or not true, and if I agree that there can be somewhere in between, but on major questions, there's really a yes or a no. And, modern science comes with all these statist imposed rules, right? Now we've got the vaccine issue, just to bring one specific up. So there's basically these atheistic communists who now make up a huge percentage of American society, apparently, and they basically want everyone to be forcibly vaccinated despite any religious or spiritual inclination, or, you know, not that you have to be religious to really question the modality of vaccination. I'm not saying I'm an anti-vaxxer or a pro-vaxxer, those stupid, inane terms that characterize the state of American discourse. But basically, I have questions about a modality that's supposedly, supports the human immune system, which is infinitely more complex than any vaccine that has been made or likely will ever be made. So, you know, when people talk about what science says for nutrition or science says for medicine, it's like, first of all, let's remember science is not a singular, monolithic, unitary authority that can be quoted. Well, science says this, and science says that. So, you know, it's ridiculous the way that people quote science like it's a new deity. It's weird, like it's a new god for them. Well, Yahweh said that we must believe this. Well, the CDC says that we must believe this. Science says this. Science doesn't speak. Science is a process of acquiring information that we all use to varying degrees. And ultimately, just because you read some government summary of research and you read the conclusion in the abstract, that doesn't mean that you actually have a grasp of the topic underlying that, area of research. And furthermore, all right, I seem to encounter a lot of these people, not necessarily personally anymore, because I don't really seek this kind of argument out, but I feel that this point needs to be made. If you have a degree and someone is bringing up a topic of conversation that pertains to something that you're supposedly an expert in, you studied biology or whatever, if you don't have the ability to speak in simple human layman terms about what you're supposedly studying, and you just say, well, I've got a degree and I'm an expert and I can't explain it to you, your degree is worthless and you should ask for a refund because you have no mastery of the topic. Your supposed, learning and education is worth less than nothing because you've successfully alienated yourself from the rest of the human population. I'm totally interested in what you can research, no matter what your specialized field is. I can find it in myself to appreciate knowledge wherever it is and learning. But these people who just get their little diplomas, their pieces of paper, and then rely on it like, well, I studied biology and I just can't explain it to you. It's very complicated. And shut up. Are you kidding me? Your degree is worth less than nothing if you can't explain the thing you supposedly devoted years and years of your life to studying. All right, I'm an English major. I'm not claiming to be a physicist. I'm not claiming to be a chemist. I'm not claiming to be a biologist. I've studied all these things and scored high on the exams, but that's not the point, all right? Understanding and learning is not a measurement on a test. It's not a piece of paper. It's a way of interacting with information as it's coming in through our eyes and ears and, our rational processes of the higher mind. We can arrive at knowledge, but not as long as we're stuck in this authoritarian state of, well, yeah, I saw the CDC said vaccines are always good, so, anybody who doesn't believe that vaccines are always good doesn't believe in science, okay? It's retarded. This level of discourse is reserved for tantrum-throwing infants normally, but for some reason these supposed highly educated people resort to it as a first line of defense and offense. And I'm getting a little worked up, but that's only, I had to take a couple weeks just to distill this message down to a level that people could actually interact with, because it gets me so stirred up. The hubris, the just arrogance of some of these atheistic communists that just prescribe state solutions for everything under the sun. And they have no grasp of biology, they have no grasp of physics, they have no grasp of chemistry. They're just quoting some government entity and pretending like they know something. And, these cheerleaders of science are not scientists. And, this brings me to a second topic. We kind of skimmed over the vaccine thing, and Panther's given a lot of really useful perspective on that as well in a previous video called Vaccine Harmony. Check it out. Climate deniers. There's no such thing as a climate. I don't believe in climate. Do you believe in climate? That just sounds stupid, right? Like, it's taken as the gospel truth that the earth is warming, it's because of carbon dioxide. All we need is the UN to impose a carbon tax, and then all of our environmental woes will be solved, right? Yeah, okay. Like, I know I'm simplifying, but that's really, this issue gets so much attention to the exclusion of literally every other environmental issue taking place on this planet. You know, Fukushima radiation, like oil spills, like all these crazy things going on the planet, all complex issues, and yet what gets the endless media coverage? Just the carbon plant food in the atmosphere is basically killing us all slowly. Here's the problem, guys. Again, science relies on data, direct observation. And here's a visualization graph of the consensus of all of the global warming models, the temperature over the century, right? Going up and up and up and up. Here's temperature since 2000. Yeah, that's a fact. Look up the graph. Don't even dare call me anti-scientific because I look at the freaking data, all right, that these supposed conclusions and assumptions are based off of. Like, you want to have a conversation with me about science and talk to me about science? Let's talk about the data, all right? Let's talk about the specific issue. And if you bring up any diplomas and say that I don't know what I'm talking about because I didn't go to formal academy training, all right, I'm going to smack you down because that's bullshit. I am capable of having high-level conversations, and the reason I studied English is because I already knew that most of the departments of the academy were full of shit. They were resting on all these assumptions, none of which could be firmly established or substantiated. And, you know, like, I've already brought up the whole gravity thing and Einstein. It's so fraudulent, and they don't know anything. They don't understand the world around them, but they're claiming to have the full religious divine authority that the clerics and the pope and the bishops used to have, saying everyone must receive mandatory vaccination because science. Like, come on, there's so many thousands and thousands and thousands of studies that have been done, abstracts that have been published, showing a lot of different conclusions on the issue of vaccination. And there's not just one vaccine, there's lots of different vaccines. And over time, we've increased the load of vaccines at an ever younger age. And there are legitimate questions to be asked about what we're putting into our infants' bodies, what we're putting into our own bodies with sucralose and aspartame and GMOs. There's a reason to doubt science as a unitary authority because that doesn't exist and it never will. Science is a process, and we can either learn those critical thinking skills or we can just diminish them and say, I believe in, you know, I don't care if you're you know, the crazy fundamentalist Christian or Muslim or whatever. Yeah, the God created the world in 7 days, and now we're here, and certain people need to die, and that's okay. You know, there's nothing between that and, yeah, the Big Bang exploded and we don't have a spirit, we're just matter, and when we die, there's nothing else. And so really the whole point of life is just to make money and, you know, make bigger computers so that we can make more genetically modified food to feed us, you know, until the sun explodes and we all die. It's like, wow, that's not really depressing. The world is inspiring, the world is wonderful, the world is magical. And science will reunite with nature and with spirituality. It's happening right now. And it fundamentally goes back to where science, as it's known today, diverged from the path of discovery, using evidence and direct observation. What I see with my eyes, what I experience in my own life is real. It will always be the prime evidence, and you can't just tell me it's anecdotal because I experienced something and therefore it's not scientific. This is the level of discourse that these people are on. My own experience doesn't count because it hasn't been written down in a medical journal. Like, it's insane. And you know, that basically wraps up my main points with this topic. This is a very controversial one. Actually, that's the last one too, is the spraying of the sky, right? Geoengineering is such an established fact. And these people want to say, oh, it's a contrail. I know what a contrail is. Nobody freaking loves ships. I'm the ship nerd. I'm the grandson of a rear admiral, great-grandson. Like, I love ships. It's in my bones. I know what a contrail is, how it forms, why it forms, and the atmospheric conditions that can lead to ice crystal formation after the trail, okay? And that's not what we see. Anybody who looks at the sky can tell there's something not right going on. Like, they've been spraying pretty heavily today, but it's not gonna make me paranoid or make me not want to go outside. But I'm just saying, for you to deny this, like, because science, you're now denying direct observation because science, which is the equivalent of mental retardation. And that's no respect to people with Down syndrome or any other debilitating condition. This is just seriously, wake the fuck up, people. I believe in science is the stupidest phrase of the 21st century. Congratulations if you used it. Get with the program, look to nature, realize that there's so much more going on, and that you too will be able to raise your level of discourse and talk about the real